Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is December 18, 2024. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure today to be here with Neal Kosaly-Meyer. How do you pronounce your name, Neal?
Neal Kosaly-Meyer. Those are Hungarian phonetics. That's my wife's name. Kosaly.
Thank you so much.
Kosaly-Meyer.
Thank you so much. Where are you calling in from?
Seattle.
First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
What is the best thing for a human being?
Yeah.
Best thing for a human being is to love and to be loved.
Oh my God. That comes from a song written by a guy who was homeless in Venice, California. His name was Inabe, and the name of the song is Nature Boy. And it goes,
oh my God.
The greatest
I
thing.
know Coltrane's. I know Coltrane's.
Very good. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I love to just reverberate with that. And so what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
My favorite form of information. Deep listening, which I learned from John Cage, Pauline Oliveros, and very much from my great mentor, Stuart Dempster.
Stuart's last name is spelled what?
Dempster, Dempster.
Thank you. So why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I would go back to the exchange between Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers on the PBS Power of Myth series, where Moyers asks Campbell, "What about the meaning of life?" And Campbell responds, "People aren't looking for the meaning of life. People don't want meaning of life. They want an experience of being alive."
Yeah.
So that's why do we hunt or collect information? Because we want to be here. We want to have the experience of being here intensely.
So well put, dude. It's really covering a lot we're going to get deep into. So is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Well, I would get back to Campbell. I mean, that sentence is central for me. People aren't looking for a meaning of life. They're looking for an experience of being alive.
Yeah.
Experience of being alive. So hunting, everything is in the service of that.
Yes.
I mean, we want that rush, you know? I mean, whether it's at a Springsteen show or reading Finnegan's Wake or listening to a Beethoven piano sonata like I was just before we started here. I mean, we want that experience of being alive, that thrill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is that innate in us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Do thoughts create emotions?
No.
Thank you. I love certainty. Fill in the blank, Neal. I'm glad you're having fun because that's what's up.
My wife is a clinical psychologist, so I'm definitely biased here.
And is she more Jungian or more Freudian?
She's both.
Oh,
She is her own thing. She is brilliant. She's wonderful.
yeah.
I mean, having the best seat for her life is one of the great privileges of my existence.
So Jung and Freud. Okay, so I don't know. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
don't know what I think until I live it.
Wow. No one says that. That's
Huh?
amazing. Well, most people say experience it but see, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that is most people say until I experience it. That's similar to live it. You
It's
said
close.
live it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Livid.
close.
Yeah.
Chomsky says that no, sorry, before that one, I missed one. Can
I was gonna
humans
say.
think sorry, can humans think without language?
Wow, that's prejudicial to all the living beings that have preceded us, I think. Um,
That word
what
was
is
too big. What
what
does
is
that
thought?
word mean? Wait, what does
Hmm?
that word mean before
What is thought? What
press,
which one
the law?
preceded us?
Yeah. Oh, preceding us. Okay, I see.
Preceded
Okay.
us,
Yeah.
yes. Um, I think there's a prejudice towards human thought in the question,
Yeah.
um, and I think consciousness precedes human consciousness.
Yeah.
Um,
Dang.
so if we're going to get into my personal religion, I think everything is conscious, which is also that's very much stimulated by Campbell again.
Yeah.
Um, that I think consciousness is everywhere. I think consciousness is in wood. I think consciousness is in stones. I think consciousness is in subatomic particles. Um, and whether there is thought in wood or stone or subconscious particles, I don't know. But I think that we privilege the human kind of being when we talk about thought in this way. I mean, I think there is some kind of awareness that is there in everything. Um, so,
Dude, you're brilliant. You're
and I
really
think
good.
that, and I think Joyce would agree with me if I'm gonna be as presumptuous to say that. I mean, I think Joyce is writing about trees and stones and rivers. They are characters in the book, and I think the reason is because I would guess that Joyce experienced trees and rivers and stones as consciousnesses with that spoke to him, that related to him, that he
Yeah,
could
Neal.
relate to in return.
Yeah, Neal, you're really concise and articulate. And you touched on something that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to accentuate, and that is there's a prejudice towards thought in that question. It's me
Yeah,
and you versus the
yeah.
wording on the questions. I'm for you saying, let me reword that. Let me change the verb or the noun in that
Mm-hmm.
question. I'm for tangents, anecdotes, stories. And,
Sure.
I'm for people saying, I don't know, or I can't answer that. I'm after your hunch and your guess and your
Awesome.
intuitions. You get it. Chomsky said language is not just words. It's a
Mm-hmm.
culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Language is always breaking down. I mean, that is a constant. Language is a work in progress, um, as Finnegan's Wake was.
Yeah.
Um,
But you're at the store and the talk with the clerk breaks down or your friend, you have a communication
yeah.
breakdown. What do you do?
Communication. It's a great song, first of all. Uh, um, it, if it breaks down, I mean, I work in visitor service at a museum, so this happens a lot. Uh,
Right.
so there are multiple things that I can do if I have. I mean, we had an experience a while back where we had some some people come into the museum. They spoke no English. And my colleague and I were, we're going back and forth with each other. And I heard enough of what they're saying that I was able to say, I think it's Portuguese. I think it's Portuguese. And we had been able to barely, and there was like a major issue. They have if you want tangents, here's a tangent. At the museum, we have to deal with a package of discounted admissions called City Pass, this is this company that does these packages in like 16 North American cities. And our place, Museum of Pop Culture, is included in the package. So the tourists come in, they're speaking a language that we're not sure what it is, and they have basically zero English, and there is like some issue with their City Pass. It's not scanning properly or something. And I'm hearing enough of what they're saying that I'm guessing that they're speaking Portuguese. And thankfully, we do have one person on staff who speaks Portuguese. And she is currently, but she's currently not stationed where we are. This is summertime, so we've got our outdoor ticketing kiosk outside, and we know she's all the way down around there. So what we have to do now is we have to let these tourists know, and crossing our fingers, we're pretty sure this is Portuguese, and we have one Portuguese speaker on staff, and we have to say, okay, you guys follow me. We're going to go outside. We're going to go down the street, and we're going to go around, and there's somebody that speaks your language there, but we don't have any way to communicate with them to actually tell this to them because nobody else here speaks Portuguese. So basically, we're able to. So I think faith is key here.
Faith?
Faith, yes. Wow. They have to. We have to. We have to make a leap and figure out that we can communicate to these people that we're going to make things okay. But in order to make things okay, you have to follow me out the door and down the street and around. And in the meantime, we've gone on the walkie-talkie. We've talked to, our coworker Bruna, who is out there at the ticket. We're bringing you some Brazilians, and they don't speak any English, but nobody can talk to them here. So you need to talk to them. So I'm taking these people out. I'm leading them down the street. They're not actually sure why they're going down the street. It's clear, and I'm going, no, believe me, it's going to work out here. And we get down, and we're around the corner, and Bruna comes out, and she says hello in Brazilian Portuguese to these people, and they erupt in cheers and applause. They are so happy. They are so happy. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful to see. So, I think that's kind of an answer. That's kind of an answer.
It's a great answer.
This was a concrete instance of language breaking down, and we had a whole bunch of us had to basically get into an unknown area in order for things to work out, and it worked out really well in this case.
Yeah. No, Neal, it's a good example. And it's like, faith is really the wider, deeper humanity term to answer the question, because you did a lot of hand gesture, and I imagine you did a lot of eye contact. But you would think they would have been a little prepared and whipped out their cell phone and said, translate my Brazilian into English.
These were older tourists.
Oh, older, okay.
And we run into this all the time, I mean, this is, they didn't have that facility. And frankly, I'm not familiar. I haven't really tried that. I've had people who've used that, but
I mean, a
But
lot of people say,
yeah.
what do you do when communication breaks down? They go, hand gesture, try again, whatever.
Mhm.
So that was
Yeah.
good. Good story. Okay, so your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Oh, it's both and.
Yeah,
Both and. We're thinking, we're feeling, we're intuitive. We are, it's like get into the Myers-Briggs typology. I mean,
yeah,
look at Jung's psychological types. I mean, it's thinking, feeling, and a lot more.
yeah. Because Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. I'm like, good luck. Like, how do you turn your brain off? And people who meditate go, okay, now think about not thinking. And there's a car on my street with a bumper sticker. It says, don't believe everything you think. I say, well, you could say, don't believe everything
Yeah.
you feel.
Yeah.
But
Well,
we,
I meditated with Seattle Zen Center for years,
yeah,
and one of the beautiful pieces of wisdom I got there is nobody ever told me that you're going to turn off your thinking.
yeah,
I mean, that is, I mean, if you're meditating, a thought comes to mind and you notice the thought has come to mind, and in the best case, you let it go. I mean, you learn to let it go and return to counting, return to breathing. Um,
See, that's you're really listening closely. I love that. No one addresses that. I say people meditate say think about not thinking. You go, no, they don't. I took meditation. I can tell you.
yeah.
So that was good listening.
Well, if
Thank
you
you.
have a good meditation teacher,
Yeah, yeah,
which I had some great people that were helpful with that. Meditation is really hard
yeah,
because thoughts will not leave you alone.
yeah.
Um,
Here's two questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. One
ooh,
is thinking a function of the soul?
oh, oh. Well, what is the soul?
Yeah.
Um, what was the context in which Alan Turing said
Yeah.
that?
Whoa. Because the second Turing question, this smart know-it-all told me, dude, that question you just asked is out of context. And so, I take these
Uh,
questions out of context. I wish
Alan Turing is my hero. Here's a
well,
tangent.
you
I
probably
have to
know
go on for
more.
a second.
Yeah, you probably
Um,
know more, Neil. Sorry. Because
well, okay.
all I can say is I'm sorry I took it out of context, but it is just a prompt to get us to talk. So go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
So rather than talking about the soul, I want to talk about Alan Turing, who was a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
And without Alan Turing, I would not have my family.
Wow.
It's that concrete. Um, Alan Turing, I mean, this came up for me when I saw the film The Imitation Game,
Yeah.
where what's the name of the actor who plays Turing there? I'm
Yeah,
blanking
I
on.
forgot his name, but I
It's
know who you're talking.
but it's but what came up is that Turing cracked the code
Yeah.
that the Nazis were using. He cracked it, and there were so many benefits they got from that. They had to kind of use it sparingly because they didn't want the Germans to figure out that they had actually cracked the code.
Yeah.
But the end of the movie comes up, and they're running those little comments that they do in these quasi-documentary things, where they say that because of Turing, the war was shortened
Yeah.
by months, if not a year or years. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were children at that time in Hungary and Romania, and toward the end of the war, um, the trains running to Auschwitz from Hungary were packed. I mean, they were on their way to exterminating all the Jews in Hungary. They were just on it. Um, And so I see this thing come up at the end of the imitation game, and I realize that if Turing didn't do what he did, I would not have my wife.
Yeah.
I would not have my children. I would not have my family.
Yeah.
So that's what comes up for me with reference to Alan Turing, and that is, Alan Turing has my gratitude. So as far as soul, let me transpose that and says my soul loves Alan Turing's soul.
Beautiful. So the second, yeah.
So
that really,
as far as what soul has to do with thought, I don't know. Soul is psyche. Soul is the deep center of the mind. If we're going to try and define it. So thought is certainly there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I can say more.
That's good. Second Turing question: can machines think?
It's kind of starting to look like it. It's like I've been spooked more than once in the last couple of years of reading about what is happening with AI right now. Is there is stuff that is getting closer and closer to passing the Turing test. There was a New York Times writer about a year and a half ago who wrote about an extended conversation he had with the Bing, the Microsoft thing, which was going in disturbing directions, but it kept going, and it never kept going in a direction where it seemed like he felt that he was talking to anything other than an actual consciousness.
Yeah.
And word is that all of that stuff is about to go next level. So I don't think at this point it's unreasonable to think that machines can think, and it's at an alarming place right now.
Yeah. Neal, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Well, that takes us right back to people do not want Joseph Campbell. People are not looking for a meaning to life. People want an experience of being alive. And that experience of being alive is pretty close to, those experiences of being alive, whether it's performing Finnegan's Wake, whether it's being at Bruce Springsteen's last show of 2024, which is where I was in Vancouver, BC, a couple weeks back, or whether it's seeing my friends' absolutely jaw-droppingly amazing folk dance troupe like I did about a year ago in November.
Nice.
Or just hang out with my wife and making each other laugh.
Yes.
But these are or playing rock and roll for the first time in about 10 years, like I did with my sister a couple weeks back in front of more people than we've ever played for before, and being received for that. Happiness is, happiness versus me. There's no contest. I want happy. I want to be happy. I want to be delirious. I want to be over the top. I want to go deep. Here's a weird kind of happiness. A couple days ago, I played my piano work in progress, which is very, very Cage inspired, very intense, very austere. To the point that when I talk about this to friends, most of the time they don't show up for the show because when I describe it, it sounds a little more than anybody wants to come in for. 2 hours long, lots of silence, very few notes. So I played the show the other night, and I got exactly one person to show up for the show, which is, if you're an avant-garde musician, that's not a surprise. That's just the facts of life. You're frequently going to be playing for very small houses.
Yeah.
And in this case, I was very happy to see that the one person who actually came out for the show, along with the one other person who was the host of the venue, but the one person who actually came out and bought a ticket was the composer John Teskey, who had actually seen me perform this piece for the first time in public about 21 years ago. And I knew he was like a huge fan of what I do. And in connection with that, he knew that when I perform this piece, which is usually in the summertime, that I will open all the windows up to let all the sound come in,
Nice.
because I want the ambient sound. I want the cars. I want the dogs barking, the birds singing, everything else to be there in an immediate way. So I came out to play, and I noticed that the room is ridiculously cold. And I see that the host and John have basically agreed to throw the door open to let all the sound in, because they understand what I'm trying to do with this piece. But it's not July, you guys. It's the middle of December. And it's like being in a walk-in refrigerator. And so at that moment, I mean, I've got a couple of options. I could go back and get my coat, and I could say, hey guys, let's be real. We all like ambient sound. We all love John Cage, but it's December 14th. Let's at least do this in a warm room. But I didn't do that. Instead, I said, all right, the door's open because these guys understand what this piece is about. I need to honor that. And that means I'm going to lean in, and I'm going to generate inner heat within. Wow. Like a Tibetan monk will do. And I'm going to get through this 2 hours, and it's going to be fine. And it was one of my, this will be one of my most cherished memories of performance. I played, I knew it was cold. I did not feel it in my hands. I did not feel it in my body. I leaned in, I leaned in, and I listened, and I played that piece about as well or better as I've ever played it. Wow. And it was, it was absolutely frigid in there, and it was, it was happiness. It was among the highest happinesses of my life.
Neal, that is so well described, because it reminded me of, my grandmother. I'm from Flint, Michigan. She would leave the window open in the winter because that keep her fresh and alive. And so you're that temperature did something in like your inner heat, almost canceled out the cold. But it reminded me.
And then when it was over, I mean, I stood up and I went over to chat with these people, and I go, it's fucking cold in here. I need to get my coat right now. And I got my coat and I came back out, but I was shivering and my teeth were chattering as soon as I stood up from the piano.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so now I'm back into my pedestrian self, not my samurai pianist self. And it's like, and now I'm shaking in
Yeah.
here. It was
It,
really
it
really
evoked,
cold in there.
Nicholas Slonimsky was booking
Mm.
this type of music at the Hollywood Bowl. And he
Yeah.
said, I would book Ives and all these avant-garde composers, and 5 old ladies would show up and 3 of them were sleeping. And
Slonimsky is great.
yeah,
Slonimsky is wonderful. I love him.
so I got that question. So one more thing I want to ask you about that
Yeah.
question is I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He
Yeah.
says happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning tends to last. Any
Mm, I would disagree.
yeah,
I would disagree because again, I go back to Campbell, and I think
yeah,
meaning is so much in the head.
yeah,
And by the way, I have massive respect for Viktor Frankl.
yeah,
So I would need to, you know, actually read Man's Search for Meaning, which I haven't done,
yeah.
but I know the experience from which that book came. So no disrespect to
No,
Frankl,
no worries. Okay, so
but happiness, I think, it depends on what you're talking about in terms of happiness.
yeah,
I mean, I think if happiness can include what I was just talking about this performance,
yeah,
about accepting the fact that, one person showed up for my gig, which
yeah,
which might be kind of a drag for a lot of people anyway. And the fact that it was uncomfortably cold, and that I've got to get through this performance, which involves extended silence and incredible concentration and everything else. So there's a massive labor
yeah,
involved in that. And if under that definition of happiness, under the recognition that happiness at some points, at most points, I think has to be hard won. I mean,
yeah.
you get gifts. I mean, you get serendipitous moments where it just comes to you. You can't count on that. You
I
can't. You
I
have to. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've put on events for more than 40 years. One
Yeah.
event in 40 years, no one showed up. And I was like, no problem. I'll just do my homework. I did it. I went up to
Yeah.
the programmer and I said, sorry. He goes, no problem. So it's like, I follow the Frank Zappa line. I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure.
No. No.
And that's not
Yeah.
failure. Your 2 people listened and
Yeah.
stayed. That was beautiful. Now you touched on this one, Neal, but I'm going to
Mhm.
ask it anyways. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
That's an interesting take on it. I mean, and this kind of comes at me sideways. So I kind of like that idea of the brain detecting consciousness, or that consciousness is everywhere to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if the brain is detecting consciousness so much as it's a particularly human kind of channel for consciousness. No,
Yeah.
but emphatically, no. I don't think consciousness originates in the brain. I don't think consciousness is an epiphenomenon of brain or neurological activity. I think consciousness is a fundamental attribute of matter and energy.
Wow, that's heavy. Matter and energy. Yeah. Because you notice the way I word it is I got it somewhere. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Then I suss it out by saying, do we more? Because I could say, do we as humans, brain, soul, mind, all do that? So that was good. You listen. Now, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
um, I would guess speed of light. I mean, I think thought is a very human conscious thing, which is probably dependent on how fast those impulses are getting through the neurons and the synapses. And I have to feel like light's going to win the race there.
Yeah. You're like Kelly Carlin. I worked for George Carlin a little, and I didn't get to interview him with all these questions, but I did interview his daughter and his manager, his manager's a fucking wake freak, by the way. 35 years. Yeah, really. And his dad invented rock merchandise for Hank Williams. But Kelly would do what you do. I'd ask a question, she'd crack up and laugh. Then she'd take a deep, Zen breath, and then she'd proceed on talking. So that's what I'm after. So this one is Audre Lorde, the poet, saying you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague, Yvonne Rainer, said, "Oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?"
You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tool.
Yeah.
And Yvonne Rainer says,
you can if you expose the tools.
If you expose the tools.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of workplace organizing 101 right there.
Workplace organizing. I like that.
Yeah. That's it. That's exposing the scripts and the brainwashing that go with the powers that be maintaining control. That
so is the tool is exposing the script.
It's exposing the script. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So here's a tangent, but I don't think it's a tangent that much. Is if you look at the expurgated version of the Bible that plantation owners prepared for their slaves.
Yeah.
And where huge chunks were taken out. Most of the book of Exodus is taken out in that plantation owner's version of the Bible. Everything that is saying that God is on the side of the poor and the oppressed and the slave, everything that says, remember that you were a slave in Egypt when you see somebody who's in a bad place. Let my people go is not in the Bible that the plantation owners gave to their slaves. The tools, the tool of the afterlife, the tool of saying be subject, be passive, follow the rules, and everything will be fine when you go to heaven after you're dead. But in this life, be obedient, be good.
Yeah.
These are the tools of the master.
Yeah. So well put, because you evoked something really good there by saying exposing the script and brainwashing with power. One is, one of the people I tried to interview for 10, 20 years is Carolyn Casey. I don't know if you know her, but
I don't know her.
Oh God, Coyote Network News. She's been on Pacifica Radio for 25 years. She's sort of like, Well, they describe her as Amy Goodman on mushrooms, but she's sort of like semiotics meets environmentalist feminism, but she's just like the female comedic Alan Watts. She's amazing. And I tried, and I don't try too hard if someone says no, but I finally got her and we had a great time. And at one point I said to her, I've heard all your lines for 20 years and I love them, but I want to get people to jump out of their stock lines. And she said, then drop your script. And it was like, she just got me perfect. And it was like, no, I didn't drop it. And my friend said, Duncan, he said, dude, you got to listen to that interview 6 times. You might learn something. But the other one was that it's been said by some Joyce scholars that the CIA and the FBI and MI5 in England studied Finnegan's Wake to invent MK Ultra, mind control. So you get your eyes sort of pop. They're like, we could get good mind control out of studying the Wake, and it's like that's not too far fetched, but it is. It sounds too kooky, conspiratorial. But the follow up is, what new toy do you suggest?
What new toy do I suggest?
Yeah. So you said the tool is exposing the script. What new tool? Because see, I asked this tool question for years, and then someone said, well, what about a toy? So now I ask, like, a follow-up is, what new toy do you suggest?
That's fun. Well, you might try committing Finnegan's Wake to memory with acute attention to musical detail.
That is a great toy. I love it. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
What do I worry about?
Yeah.
I worry about this moment in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, my devotion to Finnegan's Wake has a lot to do with my connection of this book with that line from Ulysses, that history is a nightmare from which I am trying to awaken, and that I see Finnegan's Wake as the tool or the toy to that end.
Yes.
And these days I feel like like we're falling deeper into the nightmare.
Yeah. But it's not, Neal, it's not to that end, it's to that beginning. In my end is my beginnings, T.S. Eliot. So that was really beautiful. So right into that, McLuhan learned from Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I ask you, Neal, the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Oh, well, that gets back to the master's tools.
Yeah.
Because there is so much in this world, in our workplaces in particular, so much strategic and intentional work to deprive all of us of agency, of hope, of the possibility of living the lives that we would really like to live.
Yeah.
And that is the nightmare of history.
Yeah.
And the nightmare of history is not an accidental thing. It's not chaos.
Yeah.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
That the powers of the kingdom of the air, the powers of this world, um, the satanic powers of wealth and power and all of that are, sending this message over and over again and 24/7 that there's no hope, that you need to stay in your lane, that you need to obey, that you need to trust that all of the grown-ups know what they're doing and just don't rock the boat.
Well, do artists have moral obligation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what you
Uh,
touched on, Neal, is a big issue because I just published an essay called "Can Art Stop War?" and it's all about Finnegan's Wake as an anti-war manifesto,
right.
and it's basically saying Maria Gambudis, the archaeologists, said that we're not hardwired so much for war and violence; we're more hardwired for cooperation, which
Mm-hmm.
Rianne Eisler, Chalice and the Blade, she morphed it into partnership. It's a
Mm-hmm.
partnership. So I mean, isn't that the history? Is that like that? It's interesting what you're saying because this is what McLuhan would say. And he's saying it more as a question. He would say World War II was caused by the radio. People go, no, it wasn't. It was caused by Hitler using the radio.
Yeah.
No, that maybe when humans invent these things and they shape us, we shape our tools, then they shape us. So I'm curious, your line saying you're not saying that everything is all history is not chaos. It's in any this eternal. You almost implied like plutocracy instead of democracy.
Mm-hmm. This one of the things that I do regularly at our museum is I lead a tour of our science fiction exhibits.
Yeah,
Um, and I start and end with Star Trek. And this tour has kind of grown and developed and evolved over the past year or so that I've been doing it. But it becomes more and more Star Trek centric.
yeah,
I loved when I was 8 years old was when Star Trek came on the air, and I was an absolute fan for 3 years and was seriously bummed when it got canceled when I was 11 years old in 1969. Um, and I talk about how Star Trek is based on this utterly unrealistic premise that Gene Roddenberry proposed to studio, for which he was making the pitch that we're gonna this show is based on the idea that in 100 or 200 years all human beings set aside their differences, and regardless of race, belief, language, color, all people in the 100 or 200 years from now come together and say, we're going to move on. We're tired of what human history has been so far. We are waking from the nightmare.
yeah,
And we are going to all work together going forward. And we're going to work together not to join forces to conquer or colonize what's out there. We're going to follow our curiosity. We're going to learn. We're going to try and make connections. We're doing it together. And we know from the records of that meeting that almost none of the execs in the meeting liked the idea. They thought it was stupid. They thought it was naive. They thought it was absolutely Pollyanna bullshit. And the only reason Star Trek ended up on the air in 1966 is because the CEO of the studio was also in the room, and she really liked the idea. That was Lucille Ball, by the way. And she said, and basically Lucy basically said that, okay, you guys, I hear what you're saying, but I like it. We're going to do it. And 60 years on, almost 60 years on, Gene Roddenberry and Lucy have the last laugh, as far as I can see, because you know, how many Star Trek shows have there been? How many movies? How many square feet of paperback adaptations of this? And it's all based on this idea, this ideal that all human beings got together at some point. They set aside their differences and decided, we're going to explore. We're going to boldly go where no one has gone before. You know, and as always happens when I do that tour, I'm choking up and I'm tearing up.
Oh my God.
Because that is, you know, what else is going to keep people coming back to Star Trek? Because that idea is at the heart, it's overt, and people come back to that.
Amazing.
You know, and it's never happened in history. I mean, there's nothing historical to do that, but there's a yearning for that. There's a longing for that.
Yep. We're hardwired for it. We're hardwired. You know, I know when these work, when I tear up or the person I'm interviewing tears up. And I didn't only tear up, I was about to cry because, you know, it goes deeper, Neal. Ryan Johnson went into my friend's bookstore in Santa Monica and saw the McLuhan book on the shelf. And he goes, that's the reason I became a filmmaker, because of the scene in Annie Hall. McLuhan's learned everything he knew from The Wake. And Ryan Johnson's first film is Finnegan's Wake. You know that? His first short film. Yeah, you know that.
I know. That film is fabulous.
Yeah,
that
so
was,
he went on.
Peter showed that to us in Mexico City.
Yeah, and then thank God for Peter Quadrino, and then you know, he went on and made a Star Trek, but then
so he did Last Jedi. He did this, which is one of my favorite Star Wars movies.
Yeah. Oh, he did Star Wars,
and he wanted to open. And there was a character named Finn that was introduced in The Force Awakens, and Ryan Johnson was absolutely dead set on. He says the first scene has to be the scene when Finn wakes. The first scene has to be the scene and nobody else on the film understood why this was at all important, and he had to basically concede the point because it didn't make sense as far as the story they were telling. But because he's such a wake maniac, he really wanted that.
Yeah, I got that wrong. I thought it was Star Trek. It's Star Wars movie. Okay, but I wanted to go back. You implied, were you born in 58?
Yeah.
What's your date?
August 10th.
August 10th. So then, you know, you're talking about pop culture. We're learning how to do this to transcend that history's the nightmare. Not history is not chaos. It's something that humans mess up. You know, or we fail. So then, you know, McLuhan learned from The Wake. How do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? Redemption. But I wanted to throw out this line that Sam Johnson says, because I always try to stump McLuhan, Joyceans with this: no man but a blockhead ever wrote except for money. Now, I mean, you know, Joyce, like I've encountered a lot of great Wakians, but there's few that know every fucking syllable as deep as you, Neal. I mean, you don't know the words, you know the syllables. But your take on that in regards to Joyce. I mean, we put him on this pedestal and we say, you know, he's beyond human. He's like Art Tatum. He can do no harm. You know, he does
really
it all.
Close to Art Tatum, actually. That's on point. That is
right. but he does have some sense. And that's when humans invented money. It has services and disservices. So what's your take on No Man But a Blockhead Ever Wrote Except for Money in regards to Joyce and Sam Johnson saying that?
Oh,
Trick question.
it's not a trick question. It's like Joyce was a hustler. I mean,
Yeah, there you go.
Joyce.
See?
I mean, he did what he could, but it's also if Joyce was in it for the money, he wouldn't have written Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's Joy. I mean, let's also say that that Joyce. The only reason that Joyce could write Finnegan's Wake is because he had Harriet Shaw Weaver.
Yeah.
He had a patron, and basically he knew he was going to have money, which he squandered pretty pretty effectively whenever he had it. But he was, because of Harriet Shaw Weaver, he was pretty much able to write what he wanted to write.
Yeah.
If Joyce were in it for the money, I mean, he definitely had the talent and the skill to write pot boilers, write stuff that would not just run up against the grain in the way that everything he did run up against the grain. I mean, from Dubliners onward.
Yep.
You know, and I would always maintain that Dubliners is as puzzling and opaque a book as Finnegan's Wake. I mean, it seems like it's normal, it's more pedestrian language, but every time I read Dubliners, I get to the end of the story and say, what just happened? What's going on? You know, it's
yeah, you cover that well on a YouTube video. So Neal, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Depends on which ones they are. There's some great old ideas. Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. The Tao that can be known is not the true Tao. These are old ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, we look at the Upanishads, we look at Torah, we look at the Gospels. We look at the Pali Canon, the stories of the Buddha. Look at William Blake. I mean, this is, I mean, by comparison with everything else we're saying, William Blake isn't old, but so there's plenty of powerful, beautiful, life-sustaining notions. And as far as what's new, relatively new. I mean, when Bruce Springsteen would go out on stage on the Born in the USA tour to just, when he was at the peak of his popularity, he would say, nobody wins unless everybody wins, which is in line with Buckminster Fuller, who is another relatively new guy who has incredibly beautiful, powerful things to say.
Yeah, all crew, no passengers. That's Bucky.
Everyone. John Cage has so many powerful things to say to us. Norman O. Brown.
Yeah. Well, guess where I got the question, Neal? Exactly. Cage. I can't understand why people are frightened of new ideas. I'm frightened of the old ones. Yeah. And then Charles Kettering said, people are very open-minded about new things. as long as they're exactly like the old ones.
Yeah. It's not so much whether it's old or new, is what are the ones that the what are the ones that the devils are trying to inflict on us?
Yeah.
What are the ones that the devils have always been trying to inflict on us?
Yeah. Well, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Uh, Earliest memory I can date. I mean, so here's a couple of them. I vaguely remember a diaper change where I got stuck by a pin, and I can kind of think about that. But the earliest one that I can date is seeing Pinocchio at a drive-in,
Oh, nice.
which I know was on a ticket. My next youngest sister was born in April of '61, and I know we went to see Pinocchio with movie tickets that my parents got in this congratulations basket they got at the hospital. So she was born in '61. I was born in '58. She was born in April. I was born in August. So I know I wasn't 3 yet at this point. And I vividly remember pretty much seeing the whole film. And especially I remember the absolute terror when the whale's tail comes up out of the water and slams down on their boat.
Wow.
And I think I remember, I don't know if this is editing after the fact, but I think I remember being absolutely terrified and absolutely loving it.
Listen, Neal, you evoked the great McLuhan joke. Diaper is repaid backwards.
It is, isn't it? I didn't even know that one.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
More a curse or more a blessing? Well, it's both.
Yeah. Because Joyce says remember to forget. So but you know what 90% of people say is a memory more a curse or more a blessing. They go, oh, it's a blessing. And then they think for about a second, they go, oh, well, it could be a curse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it reminds me of the Elvis song, I forgot to remember to forget you. I mean, which is, it's beautiful writing. Beautiful writing.
Right.
I forgot to remember to forget.
That's good. I'm going to look it up because I wonder if he wrote it. I think. Anyways, tell me someone within your immediate family, Neal, please, that had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
In my immediate family.
Yeah.
I could think of a few. And I'm going to go with what my daughter did for me in about 2010. And my daughter Haley and I are both massive Marvel Comics fans, and she basically kind of relived my childhood and adolescence when she basically really went through nearly all of my thousands of Marvel comics that I accumulated in the 60s and the 70s. And in 2010, she went to the Emerald City Comic Con. And Stan Lee was going to be signing autographs there, and we agreed on the particular issue of Fantastic Four that she was going to take along, that we were going to try and get Stan Lee to sign. What she knew is that when I was a kid, is that I had accumulated 5 of the 6 hallowed ranks of Marveldom, which if you were buying the comics at that time, there was always this little yellow box that it's you're a real frantic one, an RFO, if you buy 3 or more Marvel comics a month. You're a keeper of the flame, KOF, if you proselytize and get somebody else to do this. You're a Titanic true believer if you catch them out on a continuity error and write them about that. You're a QNS, you're a quite enough sayer if you write a letter and get it published on the letters pages of one of the comics, and you're a PMM, a permanent Marvelite Maximus, if you've accumulated the previous 4 of those. Now there's, and then there is the 6th, is the Fearless Front Facer, FFF, which is an honorary award, which can only be bestowed by Stan Lee himself for basically service to the Marvel cause above and beyond the Call of Duty. And Haley knew about all these because she wasn't reading the current Marvel comics. She was reading my old Marvel comics. So she goes to this convention. She stands in line all day. I'm not able to be there with her because I couldn't get the time off from work. And at one point, she's calling me throughout the day, telling me as she advances through the line. And at one point she calls and say, what was the rank that you didn't get? I go, rank? She goes, yeah, the hallowed ranks of Marveldom. Which one was it? And I go, oh, the Fearless Front Facer, the FFF. She goes, full front facer, got it. And later on we meet up, and we're both taking the bus back from downtown, and she is absolutely beat. She is, can barely stand up, and she says, okay, and she hands me this comic book, this Fantastic Four number 48, I think it is. It's the first appearance of Galactus and the Silver Surfer. And she tells me that what happened is that she gets to the front of the line, and all the way as she's getting there, all of Stan Lee's handlers have been telling her that, so don't ask for anything special. Don't ask for anything other. He's just going to sign his name. If you ask for anything special, we're going to kick you out of the line. So Haley is on the autism spectrum. And she's also, when she's going to do what she's going to do, she's going to do it. And when she gets to the front, she walks up to him, and in complete defiance of what they've said, she says, my dad read the Hulk to me when I was 5 and 6 years old. And he showed me what it was like to be alienated and to be not accepted and to be not understood. And that's the experience I had when I was in grade school. But when I came home, I would think about the Hulk, and I held on to that, and that's how I got through grade school. So he also has all the ranks except for the Fearless Front Facer. So you need to give it to him. And she says this, and all of Stan Lee's handlers are like, that's it. We told you, we warned you, you're out of here, kid. You are out of here. Stan Lee, who will remain my hero, whatever anybody has to say about Stan Lee, at that point puts up his hand and says, I must do this.
Oh my
I
God.
was not there, but I hear this, and I can hear his voice. I must do this. I mean, who is 2 superheroes here? My daughter and Stan Lee. And he inscribes on this classic comic book, he says, to Neal, a fearless front facer.
Oh my
That's the line. So that is, I mean, I can think of few people who've done anything as beautiful for me as that. But it's And I love that I get to bring it into an interview ostensibly about Finnegan's Wake. But
yeah, dude, that was again made me cry, but it's amazing. So tell Haley she did a good job raising her dad.
I will tell her.
Yes.
I will absolutely tell her. She knows it. She will bring that up when she's asking for some thing or other. She's in Kyoto right now. She is
All the power to her.
6
That's
months in Japan. Yeah.
the beautiful story. Now, same question,
Sure.
Neal, outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Somebody outside my immediate family.
Yeah.
For that would have to be Stuart Dempster.
And what'd you mainly get from him?
I got so much from Stuart Dempster. He was trombone faculty at University of Washington when I enrolled there in 1978. But prior to his time at UW, Stuart had been at the San Francisco Tape Music Center. He was fast friends with Pauline Oliveros. Worked with Terry Riley and Lauren Rush and all kinds of people down there in the Bay Area. Produced the mid-60s recording of Terry Riley's In C, which is absolute classic avant-garde recordings. And at University of Washington, I mean, he was, when he kind of saw the kind of stuff that I was interested in, John Cage and minimalism and all of that, he really, reached out and helped me and mentored me. And he was the director of the contemporary group Improvisation Ensemble, which really was a place where I really figured out a lot of things that I was doing, and gave me a lot of inside stories about working with John Cage and the Merce Cunningham Company, where he had worked as a musician for multiple tours. Introduced me to Pauline Oliveros when she would come to visit, and has continued to coach me and encourage me. He was a regular for years at the Finnegan's Wake performances in Seattle, and his affirmation and enthusiasm for that project really meant a lot to me, because Stuart knows what performance is about, and his blessing for what I was doing with this really meant a lot. I mean, he's 88 years old now, and he doesn't get out as much as he used to. But and I guess one of the big things he did was when Cage's centenary was coming up in 2012. I had a conversation with him when I was saying, I said, so is there anything happening in Seattle? What's going on? And Stuart just said, well, I don't know. He says, but I'm too old for this. I'm not the one who's going to do it. And I basically, the inference was, it says, you're telling me that I've got to do it, right? So I said, all right. So from his cue, I decided, okay, this is on me. If John Cage is important for me, I need to produce some events to do that. And I hadn't been much of an event producer before that, but I put together, a number of 5 or 6 Cage events for that year.
Beautiful.
And that was, and I don't know if that would have happened without the push he gave me there.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of led directly, and in the process of doing that, actually, that was when I really kind of dug back into Finnegan's Wake in a way I hadn't done for a few years. And so at the end of 2012, after having done a big Cage Joyce event, I thought, maybe I should see if I could learn the whole book, and did the calculations, figured out it would take me 17 years, which says, oh yeah, I know it took Cage 17 years to write. I took Joyce 17 years to write the book. So I guess this means I have to do it. So there we go.
Kismet. And then February 2nd played a role. So,
Yes.
Neal,
Yes.
did your parents raise you a particular religion?
My dad's a Presbyterian minister, so yeah.
Do you pray?
It's a good question. Prayer opened up for me when I discovered Zen and when I discovered Meister Eckhart. So I don't so much pray in terms of asking for things or in conversation, but in terms of sinking down into the ground of being as much as I can. I mean, I think of what I described, the story I told about the performance of the piano piece,
Yeah.
I would think of as prayer.
Yeah.
And also, okay, the other thing that comes up is Stuart Dempster. I mean, the most important lesson he taught me about performance is he told me always play with love.
Yes.
Always play with love. And when you play, direct your energy toward a specific person whenever you do that. And I
Wow.
don't always remember to do that, but when I do, things always go better than when I don't remember that.
Wow. You're anticipating an amazing question I'm going to ask, but if God exists, Neal, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh, I can see you did your best.
Yeah. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think everybody is trying to do their best.
Yeah.
I think everybody is doing the best they can. And that comes straight from my wife, the brilliant psychologist. I mean, life is hard, and life is hard on all of us, and it wears us out, it distorts us, it wounds us. But I honestly think everybody is trying to do the best they can.
Beautiful. That's the right attitude, dude. But really, the hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the Mob and the Samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. It's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Jesus says, love your enemies.
Yeah.
And I think that is the deepest, strongest, and nearly impossible to live up to advice about that.
Yeah.
But I also think it's the right way. It's not. I mean, it goes beyond don't acknowledge. I mean, it goes everybody else that you mentioned. There was kind of a qualification.
Yeah.
Jesus says flat out, love your enemy.
Love
your enemy. I mean, open your heart.
Exactly.
you know, and that would include, I mean, it would be helpful if you're going to do that if you do believe that everyone is trying to do the best they can.
Yeah.
Then if someone is doing stuff that you absolutely can't stand, that is absolutely contrary to your values, I mean, then you can see that, well, whatever is taking them to this place, there must be some terrible story behind that.
Terrible. Yeah. Well, Neal, it's like too, I always add if you get deep like you did, Walt Whitman said, I no doubt deserve my enemies. And American Indians, indigenous natives say, your enemy's your best teacher.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
here,
this is Jung.
yeah,
This is the shadow, right?
yep, yep.
I mean that to let someone be your enemy is to put them outside yourself, and it's not to acknowledge that darkness that you have in you.
Yeah.
Uh,
But this is Nassim Taleb. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. My friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. Gregory Bateson says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
does punishment work for what? Um,
That's good. You answered a question with the question. That you win. That's what this series is all about. But I mean, everybody wants to punish the evildoers in the world right now. That's called accountability.
mhm.
I think it's like Lenny Bruce, what you said, go back to Blake. We become what we behold.
Yes.
Lenny said, you can call cops three things: cops, pigs, or peace officers. Why don't we call them peace officers? Because that's what we want them to do. But when something goes haywire, what do you do?
Mm. Yeah. So let's talk about Finnegan's Wake for a second.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes back to the wake. Perfect.
Here comes everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and the unhinged chaos of that book, which is an unhinged chaos, the experience of unhinged chaos, which is also, a carefully, but also spontaneously calculated text.
Yeah.
Um, and we want control. We want somebody to be in control. We don't feel like we have the power or the agency to manage what's going on out there. And so we permit these hierarchies, and and to the point that some people want a strong man to just bring the hammer down. But what if we could? What if we really could manage this on our own? My son last Christmas gave me an account of the 1919 general strike in Seattle, which I haven't completed, but I got far enough into it to see that in Seattle in 1919, the unions were strong enough that at a certain point when people in general had had enough, is that they actually called a general strike and shut down the town. But the result of that was not chaos. It was not want, because the people in the unions of all the various industries and workplaces in Seattle worked together to basically create a system which worked as well or better than the system that had existed beforehand.
Wow.
That nobody was going hungry. You know, the garbage was getting picked up. You know, all the services were kept online, but they were being done by the people who were holding the strike. And it's what happened in Seattle in 1919 is a demonstration to me that it's possible to have a world that is not controlled by the people that you assume are the people with the people with the wealth and the power are the only ones who can keep order.
Yeah.
The 1919 strike shows that that's not the case. The U.S. Army was basically coming to the walls of Seattle because, you know, there was nobody in town that was able to push back against the strikers. And when it was clear that the army was coming, the strikers said, "Okay, we've made our point," and relinquished power. But people have the power. That's what Patti Smith's song, which is
Yeah. Oh, you love it. Yes. People have the power.
One of my favorite things. And it's true. You know, we have the power if we want it. And I think that's what Finnegan's Wake is about too.
Amazing. Patti Smith's she's a Wakey and she cherishes her copy. She says it's like Sumerian texts. It's amazing.
But there's that amazing photo of her asleep with the wake in front of her. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. But you know, Neal, I asked for 90 minutes and we're almost there. Can you do one more and then we'll plan a part 2 so we can get into the wake, Joyce, and music?
Yes,
I really want to get into music.
Absolutely.
This has been amazing because I just wanted to touch on what you just said, carefully spontaneous. When I worked for George Carlin, we got a flyer in the mail and it said, "I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity." Which is an amazing thing that echoes in, you know, the big movie that just came out about Maria Callas. Maria said, in order to be a performer, you have to have half your brain in control and half of it out of control.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
So James Joyce, here's the line I always love to lay on Wakians, and they'll go, "That's not true." But I hear Joyce stuff over the years, and I like to repeat it. And it doesn't mean if it's true or not. It's just a jumping off point. So I'll just read you the question. As I said, I should say allegedly. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out because he said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, because human beings living life involves reflection, it involves recreation. I mean, that's part of life for us. This comes up for me in connection with Cage a lot.
Yeah.
Because he wrote the silent piece.
Yeah.
And
which charted on the English pop charts. That's proof it's not bull. You know, normal people go, "That's bullshit." I goes, "Dude, it charted on the English pop charts. Come on."
But so he wrote 433 in 1952.
Yeah.
And he continued to write music.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that's not a cop-out or a failure to commit to the bit on Cage's part. It's that listening to silence changed Cage's sense of composition.
Yeah.
And I also think that Joyce, sometimes I think that Finnegan's Wake is, for Joyce, is essentially a transcription of silence.
Oh,
It's
good.
it's a transcription of the unconscious. It's a transcription of the sounds of traffic and of rivers and of the voices that Joyce heard around them.
Yeah.
And it's a transcription that goes through filters or effects pedals, so to speak.
Yes.
But it's with human beings, it's a balance of listening, seeing, smelling. It's what we take in, but we always, it's changed by us in the process. And I think the most beautiful kind of art is the art where the artist can be transparent enough to that there's an acknowledgement in the art that this is just the world coming through me.
Yeah. That's Marshall's favorite line is the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
I love it.
And you know, David Moss, the great experimental musician, he and vocalist, he said, "Hey, New Guinea, my friends studied that culture and they have no word for music." And then I looked it up, and Yoruba and Africa have no word for music.
Mm-hmm.
They have words for instruments and dance, you know. And this is amazing what you just said, that you know, um, Finnegan's Wake is a transcription of silence for Cage. That's like the guy goes backstage on a guy who jammed with Cage, Sun Ra. He goes backstage and he goes, dude, my kid could play that. You know, Sun Ra's doing like Cecil Taylor he says, my kid could do that. And Sun Ra goes, but can he transcribe it?
I mean, there's an account of Cage had somebody saying like says I could. I mean, Cage. Somebody said to Cage, I could do that as well as you can.
Oh
And
yeah.
Cage's response was, is there anything I said that indicated that I think you're stupid? I mean, that
Yeah.
was, it's
That's what I think. I think
here
great
comes
art.
everybody. Here
Yeah.
comes everybody.
Here comes everybody. Great art is, in my opinion, is when it fucks your shit up and then you go, I could do that. So it makes you rethink. You know, George Clinton, they said, what's your favorite kind of music? He says, the kind of music that makes me feel uncomfortable. Like, how could music be bad? Well, you know, why don't I like that music? And then you're saying everybody, like, that's Joseph Beuys. Did you know this one? Joseph Beuys, who said, you know, everybody's an artist, wrote another chapter to Finnegan's Wake as an art piece.
Oh,
Isn't that amazing?
We have the current special exhibit in our museum is a big Keith Haring retrospective.
Yeah.
And it includes Keith Haring's portrait of Joseph Beuys, which I'm absolutely thrilled to see that my museum now has a portrait of Joseph Beuys in it, which was absolutely thrilling.
Yeah. Well, Neal, we could go on forever and ever, and I hope we do. It could be an 8-part Netflix series, you know, illustrated by your daughter and son, you know.
Yeah.
And I do want to get really, I have a whole slew of Joyce questions and I have a whole slew of music questions. And I really appreciate your time and energy. So we'll hopefully pick a date and we can revisit. And
happy to.
thank you so much. I mean, I really got moved several times, and so much of what you said and talked to me about resonates with me, but also enlightens me and helps me learn more. So thank you so much, Neal.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah. And even though I'm going to hit this end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever. Thanks a lot, Neal. Love you.
Sure.